Osagie Okojie is a well-known, feared ruthless businessman in the whole of Abuja. His wealth is the result of his cold, calculated methods. He is feared by his counterparts. He doesn't hesitate to take over businesses or land from others to expand his empire. His reputation is that of a man who will destroy anyone who stands in his way to achieving his goal. He's known for using legal loopholes and shady tactics to steal properties from the vulnerable. One such victim is Shola, a hardworking man who spent years building his electronics business. Shola's shop was not just a business, it was his life's work, and he had poured all his effort into it. Osagie wanted the property housing Shola's business for himself. The opportunity came up when he came in contact with Shola. Osagie saw an opportunity. He used his influence to pressure Shola into selling the property that housed his store. When Shola refused, Osagie made a series of illegal moves to confiscate the building. Shola as a result lost his business which he had used all his life worth to acquire. He became devastated by what had happened. This made him sink into depression. His livelihood was gone, and he couldn't cope with the weight of his failure. Unable to overcome the heartbreak, Shola took his own life, leaving his only daughter Caroline to pick up the pieces. Caroline, heartbroken by her father's tragic death, vowed to avenge his death. She had grown up watching her father work tirelessly to make the store a success, and to see it all taken away in an instant was a devastating blow. But Caroline was no ordinary victim. Being an intelligent, determined woman, she was fueled by rage. She knew that Osagie had to pay for what he had done, not just to her family but to countless others. Caroline spent the next few years carefully plotting her revenge. She studied his business dealings, working tirelessly to gather information about him. She built connections with people who had crossed paths with Osagie, and through them gathered enough evidence of his shady dealings. If she wanted to get Osagie, she knew she couldn't go after him recklessly, she would have to be smart about it. Caroline knew that to get close to Osagie she would have to move in the same circle as his. After years of research, she learned that Osagie frequently visited a particular high-end restaurant in Abuja, where he met with his business associates. Caroline knew she had to make herself known in those circles. She took on a new identity, posing as a successful businesswoman who had made her own fortune. At the restaurant, Caroline first laid eyes on Osagie. He was everything she had imagined, arrogant, self-assured, and oblivious to the lives he had ruined. She watched him closely as he chatted with his associates, laughing and carrying on, while the people around him cowered in his presence. Caroline saw her chance. She made sure to approach the table where Osagie sat, feigning confidence. She introduced herself as Carla, a successful businesswoman with a keen interest in real estate. Osagie, intrigued by her beauty and charm, was quick to engage with her. He did not recognize her, but there was something about her that felt familiar. Over the next several months, Caroline made herself indispensable to Osagie's business ventures. She pretended to be an ambitious woman looking to expand her portfolio, and Osagie, ever the opportunist, saw an ally in her. He invited her to meetings and business deals, slowly pulling her into his inner circle. Caroline played the role perfectly. She flattered him, praised his success, and even pretended to agree with his ruthless business tactics. She gained his trust, and with each passing day she learnt more about his operations. As time passed, she discovered his illegal activities, the shady deals he made, and the many people he had exploited along the way. But more importantly, Caroline learned about Osagie's greatest weakness, his ego. Caroline's ultimate goal was to strip Osagie of everything he held dear, just as he had done to her father. She knew that in order to break him she had to take away his pride, his wealth, his business empire, and his reputation. But she also understood that she couldn't do it all at once. She had to be strategic. First, Caroline began sowing seeds of doubt among Osagie's business partners. She subtly turned them against him by leaking information about his shady dealings. Slowly but surely Osagie's allies started to question his judgment. His once loyal partners began to withdraw from deals and distance themselves from him. Next, Caroline used her connections to expose some of Osagie's illegal activities. She anonymously sent documents to the authorities, exposing the corruption and fraudulent practices he had used to acquire his properties. The investigation was slow, but as soon as it started to gain momentum, Osagie's businesses were under scrutiny, and rumors of his criminal behavior began to spread. This greatly affected him negatively. With Osagie's reputation tarnished and his business empire beginning to crumble, Caroline decided it was time for the final act. She knew that to fully break Osagie, she needed to humiliate him in front of his own associates. The opportunity came when Osagie hosted an extravagant event to salvage his image and maintain control over his empire. Caroline, now firmly in Osagie's inner circle, convinced him that she was the perfect person to help him restore his reputation. She encouraged him to announce a major new business partnership at the event, something that would impress his peers and show that he was still in control. But what Osagie didn't know was that Caroline had already set the stage for his downfall. During the event, as Osagie took the stage to announce the partnership, Caroline stood in the back, watching with a cold smile on her face. As Osagie spoke, a series of leaked documents were projected onto the big screen behind him, revealing his illegal dealings and the stolen properties. The crowd gasped as the truth about Osagie's ruthless tactics was laid bare for all to see. Osagie's face turned pale as the documents exposed the years of manipulation and exploitation he had used to amass his wealth. His business partners who had once feared him, now turned their backs on him. The press was there, capturing everything. The fall from grace was swift and brutal. Osagie's empire collapsed overnight. His wealth, once vast, evaporated as lawsuits piled up and his assets were seized. He was publicly humiliated, and his name became synonymous with corruption and greed. In the aftermath, Osagie was left with nothing. The man who had once controlled everything was now a broken figure, facing the consequences of his actions. As for Caroline, she had achieved her revenge. She had taken everything from Osagie, just as he had taken everything from her family. But after all that had transpired, she didn't feel the satisfaction she had expected. Revenge had cost her years of planning and manipulation, and in the end she realized that she had become a part of the very system she had once despised. Caroline stood in front of her father's grave, looking out over the city. She had avenged him, but at what cost? It's over now, Dad. He'll never hurt anyone again. But deep inside, Caroline knew that some wounds could never truly heal.
Caroline stood there, staring down at her father's grave. The cool breeze swept through the cemetery, and the weight of everything she had done in the name of revenge settled heavily on her shoulders. For years, she had planned, manipulated, and schemed to take Osagie down. Now that it was all over, she was left with a feeling of emptiness rather than satisfaction. Her father's death had torn apart her world, and Osagie's ruthless actions had set her on this path. But now, with Osagie ruined and his empire in ruins, what had she truly gained? Caroline turned and walked away from the grave, her heels clicking against the pavement. She had made Osagie suffer, and he had lost everything: his wealth, his power, his reputation. But in the process, she had become someone she had once vowed never to be, someone consumed by the same greed and vengeance that had driven Osagie. In the darkness of her thoughts, she wondered if this was the cost of revenge. Was it worth it? As the dust settled from Osagie's downfall, Caroline decided to leave Abuja for a while, seeking solitude and peace. She needed to heal from everything: her father's death, her relentless pursuit of vengeance, and the darkness that had slowly crept into her heart. She moved to a small town on the outskirts of the city, where she began to rebuild her life from scratch. Away from the world of high-stakes business and corrupt power struggles, Caroline found solace in the simplicity of her daily life. She opened a small cafe, something she had always dreamed of doing. It wasn't grand or glamorous, but it was hers. In time, she began to find some peace. She no longer thought of Osagie every day. The people she met in the town were kind and genuine, and slowly she started to realize that there was more to life than vengeance and wealth. Meanwhile, Osagie's life had taken a dramatic turn. After the collapse of his empire, he found himself living in the very same dilapidated building that had once housed his sprawling offices. His luxurious home was gone, his extravagant lifestyle a thing of the past. Osagie was left with nothing but the bitter realization of his past mistakes. For the first time in his life, he understood what it meant to be truly powerless. He had lost everything: his wealth, his influence, his friends, and for what? A life built on taking from others, without considering the consequences. His reputation was shattered, and he became a shadow of the man he once was. Osagie had been humbled, and for the first time in years, he began to reflect on his actions. The pain of losing everything was excruciating, but it also made him confront the terrible truth. He had destroyed not only others but himself as well. He tried to reach out to former allies, but no one was willing to help him. He had burned every bridge, and now no one was left to offer him a hand. Osagie had no choice but to rebuild from the ground up, starting over as a man with no power, no wealth, and no friends. But even in his brokenness, Osagie began to change. He realized that no amount of money could bring back what he had lost: his integrity, his relationships, and his humanity. He started seeking redemption, not for wealth, but for the man he had become. Months passed, and Caroline settled into her new life. One morning, as she opened the doors to her cafe, a familiar figure walked past: Osagie. He was unrecognizable. His once pristine suit was now a threadbare jacket, his expensive shoes replaced with worn-out sneakers. His once confident posture was now slumped, his eyes no longer exuding arrogance, but a deep sadness. Caroline froze as she saw him. It was as if time had stopped. The man who had destroyed her life, who had caused her father's death, was standing before her, no longer a powerful businessman, but a broken man, humbled by life. For a moment, she thought about ignoring him, walking past, and pretending she didn't recognize him. After all, he didn't deserve her attention. But something in his eyes stopped her. Osagie hesitated, as if unsure whether she would even acknowledge him. He had heard rumors that Caroline had been living in the town, but he had never imagined he would cross paths with her. He had never expected to see her again, especially not like this. Caroline stared at Osagie for a moment, unsure of what to do. Her heart raced. This was the moment she had dreamed of for years, the moment when she could confront him and see him broken. She could feel a surge of anger rising within her, but she suppressed it. She had already won. He had lost everything, just as she had wanted. But instead of the harsh words she had imagined, Caroline simply asked, "Do you need something, Osagie?" He looked at her, his face etched with pain. I didn't expect to see you here. I know I don't deserve anything from you, but I wanted to apologize. For everything. For your father. For all the people I've wronged." Caroline didn't answer immediately. She studied him carefully, weighing the sincerity of his words. There was no longer any arrogance in his voice. He wasn't asking for forgiveness. He was simply acknowledging the harm he had caused. "You took everything from my father. And in doing so, you destroyed my life," Caroline said softly, her voice steady. "But I've learned something from all this, too. Revenge doesn't heal the pain. It only adds to it." Osagie lowered his head, the shame heavy on his shoulders. "I can never bring back what I took from you or your father. But I've changed. I'm sorry." For a moment, Caroline said nothing. Then she nodded. "I believe you. But it doesn't change anything. I'm not the same person I was. I don't need revenge anymore." And with that, Caroline turned and walked back into her cafe, leaving Osagie standing there, a man trying to find redemption in the aftermath of his mistakes. Osagie spent the next few years continuing his journey of redemption. He worked at a small business, far removed from the world of power and corruption he had once ruled. He worked hard to pay off his debts, and though he never regained his former wealth, he found a sense of peace in knowing that he was trying to make things right, one small step at a time. Caroline, on the other hand, flourished in her new life. Her cafe became a beloved part of the community, and over time, she was able to forgive herself for the choices she had made in her quest for revenge. While she would never forget her father or the pain that Osagie had caused, she understood that healing came from within. As time passed, both Caroline and Osagie found their own paths to redemption. Their lives had been intertwined by tragedy and revenge, but in the end, they each learned that the greatest victory was not in destruction, but in the ability to move forward, to heal, and to change. Months had passed since their brief encounter in the cafe, and both Caroline and Osagie had continued their separate journeys. Yet, something about that moment, Osagie's vulnerability, his genuine apology, stuck with Caroline. She had expected to feel nothing but disdain for him, but instead, there was a small flicker of something else. One afternoon, as Caroline worked in her cafe, she received a message on her phone. It was from Osagie. It read, "I understand if you don't want to talk to me, but I wanted to thank you for being kind the other day. I am truly sorry for everything. If you ever want to talk, I'm here." Caroline stared at the message for a moment. It was odd, seeing Osagie reach out like this. But as much as her pride urged her to ignore him, a part of her wondered if perhaps there was more to this story. If there could be a way to move beyond the pain, and maybe even find healing in an unexpected place. After much thought, Caroline decided to respond. "It's been a long time, Osagie. But we can talk. Maybe it's time to clear the air." Their first meeting was awkward. Osagie was visibly nervous, unsure of how to approach Caroline now that he was no longer the powerful businessman he once was. He had lost his swagger, and his pride had been shattered. They met in a small park not far from the cafe. Caroline arrived first, sitting on a bench and watching the birds flutter around. When Osagie arrived, he seemed unsure whether to sit beside her or maintain his distance. But Caroline motioned for him to sit. For the first time in years, there was no business deal, no fight, no animosity. It was just two people talking, trying to make sense of their past. "I'm not the man I was," Osagie said quietly as he sat beside Caroline. "I can't undo what I've done. But I've been trying to be better, to make amends." Caroline turned to look at him. "You destroyed my life, Osagie. But I've also come to realize that holding on to hate and revenge didn't heal me. I needed to change too. I didn't expect this, a humble man, seeking forgiveness." Osagie nodded, his eyes meeting hers. "I was blinded by power and greed. I never thought about the consequences of my actions until it was too late. Losing everything. It's the hardest lesson I've ever learned." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their shared history hanging between them. Slowly, the conversation shifted, not to the past, but to the present. Caroline shared how she had found peace in running her cafe, and Osagie spoke about the small business he was working at, trying to rebuild his life from the ground up. "Maybe we were both broken in different ways," Caroline said softly. "But that doesn't mean we can't rebuild." As the weeks passed, Caroline and Osagie began to meet more often. At first, their meetings were formal: coffee, walks, and conversations about the present. But slowly, their connection deepened. Osagie was no longer the ruthless businessman who had destroyed her father's legacy. He was just a man trying to find redemption. And Caroline, though still scarred, was learning to forgive, not just Osagie, but herself as well. There were moments when they would laugh together, sharing stories of their childhoods, their hopes, and their dreams. Caroline found herself surprised by the gentleness Osagie showed in his new life. He was nothing like the man who had once hurt her so deeply, and she began to see a side of him she had never imagined existed. For the first time, Caroline began to wonder if it was possible to let go of the past completely. Perhaps their shared pain, their journey of healing, could be the foundation of something new. One evening, after a quiet dinner at Caroline's cafe, they walked along the street. The sun had just set, painting the sky with shades of pink and purple. It was a calm evening, and as they passed a small fountain, Osagie stopped and turned to Caroline. "Thank you," he said softly, "for giving me a second chance. I never thought I'd get to be part of your life again, and yet, Here we are. You've shown me kindness I don't deserve, and I can't begin to express how grateful I am." Caroline looked at him, her heart beating a little faster than usual. She had spent so much time hating him, and now here he was, standing before her, vulnerable, humble, and sincere. It was hard to deny that a part of her was drawn to him in a way she hadn't expected. "Osagie," she whispered, stepping closer. "I never thought we'd get here, either. But maybe we were both given a second chance." The air between them seemed to hum with unspoken emotions. Caroline's hand brushed against his, and for a brief moment their eyes locked, filled with an understanding they had never shared before. Without thinking, Osagie leaned in, and their lips met in a soft kiss. It was gentle, tentative, as if both of them were unsure but willing to take a leap into something new. The kiss wasn't filled with passion, but rather with the quiet relief of two people who had been through so much, finally finding solace in one another. Over the next few months, Caroline and Osagie's relationship deepened. What started as an unlikely friendship blossomed into something neither of them had expected. They had both been broken by life, but together they found a way to rebuild. They spent time exploring their city, visiting museums, attending community events, and simply enjoying each other's company. Slowly, Caroline came to realize that the man standing before her now wasn't the one who had caused her so much pain. He had changed. And Osagie, for his part, had never been happier. His heart had been heavy for so long, burdened by guilt and regret, but now he felt a sense of peace he had never known. Caroline was no longer the girl he had wronged so many years ago. She had forgiven him, and in doing so, she had allowed him to forgive himself. One evening, as they sat on a bench by the river, Osagie took Caroline's hand in his. The air was cool, and the stars shone brightly above them. "Caroline," he began, his voice full of emotion, "I've spent my life making mistakes. But meeting you, seeing the person you've become, has been the greatest gift I could ever ask for. I don't want to live without you. Will you marry me?" Caroline's heart skipped a beat. She had never imagined she would be sitting here with Osagie, a man she had once sworn never to forgive. But now, looking into his eyes, she saw not the man who had destroyed her family, but someone who had truly changed. "Yes," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Yes, I'll marry you." Their wedding was small but beautiful. It was a simple ceremony in a garden, surrounded by close friends and family. It wasn't a grand affair, but it was perfect for them, two people who had fought through the darkest parts of their past and emerged stronger. As they exchanged vows, Osagie promised Caroline that he would spend the rest of his life proving to her that he was worthy of her love. Caroline, in turn, promised to continue building a future with him, one where they could both heal and grow together. It wasn't a story of a perfect romance. It was a story of redemption, forgiveness, and the power of second chances. Together, they were ready to face whatever life had in store, side by side. And so, a new chapter began for Osagie and Caroline, one filled with hope, love, and the promise of a brighter future. After their wedding, Caroline and Osagie faced the challenge of blending their lives together, but this time, it was different. They had both shed the past versions of themselves that had been weighed down by anger, guilt, and fear. Now, they were determined to make their marriage a reflection of the people they had become, two people who had been broken, but found strength in each other. They decided to move into a modest house in the suburbs of Abuja, away from the chaos and the memories of their past. The house was small, but it symbolized their fresh start. It was a place where they could build a future, away from the shadows of Osagie's former ruthless business empire. Osagie, with the help of Caroline, started a new business, one that focused on community development and giving back. It wasn't a multi-million-dollar empire like the one he had built before, but it was honest work. He worked hard to create opportunities for others who had been victims of the system he had once exploited. This new business wasn't about power or wealth. It was about creating a legacy of goodwill, something he could be proud of. Caroline, meanwhile, continued running her cafe, but now with a renewed sense of purpose. She started using the cafe as a hub for local community events, art exhibitions, charity fundraisers, and gatherings that aimed to bring people together. Her cafe had always been a place of healing for her, and now it became a space for others to find solace, too. They supported each other's endeavors, and their partnership grew stronger each day. Their relationship wasn't built on idealistic notions of perfection, but on trust, respect, and mutual growth. They shared their dreams, their fears, and their pasts, working together to create a future that was more meaningful than they had ever imagined. As they built their new life, old challenges began to surface. Osagie's former associates, who still remembered him as the ruthless businessman, began to notice his change. Some tried to pull him back into the world of power, greed, and manipulation, offering him deals that would guarantee his success, but at a great moral cost. These temptations tested his resolve. "Why are you fighting it, Osagie?" one of his former partners asked during a meeting at a swanky restaurant. "We could bring back the empire you once had. The power, the money. All of it could be yours again." But Osagie had a different vision now. "That's not who I am anymore," he said firmly. "I've realized the cost of power. The price isn't worth paying." Caroline stood by him, offering her unwavering support. She knew the temptation would always be there, but she also knew that they had both found something far more valuable than material wealth: peace, love, and the satisfaction of doing the right thing. In the face of pressure, they stood firm in their commitment to building an honest life. The lessons of their past shaped their decisions, and with each challenge, they grew stronger together. As time went on, Caroline and Osagie grew even closer. They continued to support each other, and the love between them deepened in ways they hadn't anticipated. The life they had built together felt stable, fulfilling, and full of promise. But then, one day, Caroline discovered she was pregnant. The news took them both by surprise. They had always talked about having a family one day, but they hadn't expected it to happen so soon. They were both thrilled but also nervous, knowing that this new chapter would come with its own challenges. Osagie was overjoyed. He had never imagined being a father, but now the thought of raising a child with Caroline filled him with excitement. He was determined to be the best father he could be, to give his child the love and stability that he hadn't experienced in his own childhood. Caroline, too, was excited, but she couldn't help but feel a little overwhelmed. She had always been independent, and the idea of becoming a mother was both exciting and daunting. But with Osagie by her side, she knew they could face anything together. As the months passed, Caroline's pregnancy progressed, and both she and Osagie embraced the new chapter in their lives. Osagie became more involved in the preparations for their child's arrival. He attended doctor's appointments with Caroline, helped decorate the nursery, and even learned how to cook some of the meals that Caroline loved. Their relationship deepened even further as they navigated the challenges of impending parenthood. It was a time of joy, reflection, and growth. Caroline found herself loving Osagie in ways she hadn't expected, seeing him not only as the man who had once wronged her, but as someone who was now committed to their family's future. When their baby girl, Amara, was born, it was a moment of pure joy. She had the most beautiful smile and eyes that seemed to hold the promise of a bright future. Osagie held their daughter for the first time with tears in his eyes, knowing that his life had come full circle. This little girl was a living testament to everything he had worked for: love, redemption, and a chance at a fresh start. As they raised Amara, Caroline and Osagie continued to build a life grounded in love, honesty, and purpose. They were no longer defined by their past mistakes or the pain they had endured. They were defined by the family they had created and the work they did to better their community. Together, they continued to serve as a beacon of hope for those who had struggled like they had. Osagie became an advocate for victims of corporate exploitation, using his voice and resources to speak out against the injustices he had once perpetuated. Caroline continued to nurture her cafe and create spaces for healing and connection. They had both come a long way from the people they once were, and they knew that their journey was far from over. But now, with their daughter by their side and a future full of promise, they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, together. Years later, Caroline and Osagie looked back on their journey, knowing that the road to redemption had been long and filled with obstacles. But they had emerged stronger, more compassionate, and more united than ever before. Their love story wasn't just about romance, it was about forgiveness, healing, and the power of second chances. Together, they had proven that even the most broken of pasts could lead to a beautiful future. As they sat together, watching Amara play in the garden, they smiled at each other, knowing that the life they had built, based on love, respect, and understanding, was the greatest reward of all. And as the sun set on another peaceful evening, they knew they had found something far more valuable than wealth or power, a love that had conquered the past and created a future filled with hope. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this intriguing story, please drop a like and comment on your favorite part of the video, and do well to subscribe to my channel, Folktale by Queen Mother. Don't forget to turn on your notification as well so you won't miss out on our next interesting story. Equally share this story and channel with your friends and family. It has not been easy getting here, but I really appreciate all of you who watched the story to the end. Do have a lovely day. Thank you.